Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. Silver, $3,986. But the debt clock is moving backwards. Let's explore. Yes, in the continuation of the series that I have a playlist of, the debt clock, silver and the debt clock, we are chronicling the rise of silver as compared to the ratio of dollars printed compared to the amount of silver mined per year. But I have seen it and have been made aware that there are times when it moves backwards. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video, because for the second time in recent weeks and the like, we have seen that particular number take a move in the opposite direction. And what's going on here? Because it is fascinating. Now, for those who are familiar, and for those who are not familiar especially, the dollar to silver ratio is not what the price of silver should be per ounce. But this is a more telling number of what the amount of dollars printed based off of the M2 money supply. And we can look here, we can see it right here, that the silver to dollar ratio is at $3,986 per ounce. That's $3,986 bills printed based off of the year-over-year increase in the U.S. M2 money supply, divided by the yearly world production of silver in ounces. And these are sources that come to us from the Federal Reserve and the USGS, the United States Geological Survey. And typically these numbers go up. In other words, the amount of dollars compared to silver ratio goes up. And the last video I did was when it was right around this number before, but it was going to climb up to over $4,000. It did go up over $4,000. But then it scaled back. It went back. And that could be because of perhaps how they're calculating the US M2 money supply. They're literally creating so much money now that's probably difficult to track and calculate because they are digitizing much of it. So here we can see the US M2 money supply now, how much that's ticking up here. And when you take that into account, the supply there since 2000 and where it is now and how much it's increased, adding to the national debt and the deficit and spending. A lot of this money and what we're happening now, you saw a video that I posted, which I'll link to at the end screen of this video, that we have reached record deficit and spending levels in the United States. And, you look at that compared the debt to the GDP ratio, well, they ought to have a number for the spending for the GDP ratio. But essentially, when you take and calculate it, we are spending at wartime levels. And then we haven't seen numbers like this since 1945 with spending to the GDP. So those are the things you have to take into account. And so calculating these numbers, how can we trust these numbers? My guess is we probably can to a point, because they are revising them backwards, at least here a little bit, to try to make them more realistic. But with everything being said, because of the types of data we're talking about and how it's brought together and aggregated, there's going to be room for error. And I believe that's kind of what we're seeing, a correction of those errors. But make no mistake, we're seeing some pretty big numbers here when you take into the amount of dollar bills that are being digitized or printed for every ounce mined per year. And we saw back in 2013, it was $2.63. Of those many dollar bills, just over a $half bills printed for every ounce of silver out there. We do have a time machine here that goes back, but I don't think this will give us the numbers we look for as far as it doesn't preserve what the silver to dollar ratio was in that particular year on this day back in 2016, which is why I've created a playlist of all those videos so that we can kind of chronicle it here, and keep track of it. I wish I would have started doing these videos sooner, but I'm going to keep doing this so that we can see when it goes backwards and when it goes forward. So if you go back to 1980, again, none of that's there, but you can see what the U.S. national debt was back then. Fascinating indeed. Now there is a 2024 number here. I think this used to be 2023, and it's calculating that the dollar to silver ratio in 4 years will be 9,193 for every ounce minted or mined. Fascinating indeed. That's practically more than double what it is now in just 4 short years. Interesting indeed. I don't know what this budget showdown is. That just goes to show you what will budget estimates comparatively to what that's going to be. So there it is. So I hope that answers some of the questions as to where things are now with the silver to dollar ratio, because really that's what it is. And it gives us, I mean, I can't say for sure that's why it's going backwards, but my guess is they are recalculating their numbers as information gets released from the Federal Reserve and from the USGS, probably more likely having to do with the US M2 money supply estimates being updated and calculated. It's not necessarily going by the mining ratio that the USGS collects, or the mining data that USGS collects annually basis, because that's pretty much going to be much easier to track. You can't just print silver, which is why we're seeing this number. And that's the whole point of these videos, to give you some idea. Because, when you look up the price of silver per ounce, which is right now as of the recording of this video, it's about it's about $27.30 or somewhere thereabouts. In fact, I can tell you exactly what it is. Look at this window up here. Silver's at $27.20. And so this 1 silver ounce is trading for that on the market. But when you take into account how many dollar bills are printed each year for each ounce of this metal, it's 3,986. Now, those are dollars we're not going to see in the economy. No, those are dollars that are trading between these big banks. They're being injected and pumped into the stock market. Those aren't markets. Those aren't dollars that are being actively spent in the economy. The velocity of money is not as happening as many dollars that are out there, and that's the big difference. In a sense, this should scare you how much liquidity there is in the market. And that is the point of these videos, is to communicate that to you, which is why holding silver, they cannot make this. They're not doing this to silver. It may be so much with the COMEX and the futures and the like there, and that's how they're doing it. But the physical metal itself, hey, there's a finite amount of it. And that's why I hold it in the physical. That's why I've got it right here in my hand. I always have some silver nearby. And that helps us to give a better understanding, and it should, really in a sense, it should embolden us to continue stacking, as it were, really no matter what the price action is. As long as you hold silver, they're printing more dollars than there are silver each year. Definitely. So there you have it. And so I hope that explains a little bit there, but the debt clock has moved a little bit backwards here. But silver is still holding its own compared to the amount of dollars that are printed each year. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch this video, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe. As an addendum to this video, just want to make sure people understand, when it comes to silver, silver's comparatively, with the amount of dollars that are printed compared to the price action, The markets are very powerful things, and I know many people believe they're manipulated, but just because the amount of dollars that are printed that aren't in the economy moving around, which is known as velocity of money, that means that the price of silver, where it is now, where it could be, may not necessarily be undervalued, and it could obviously still move lower, even if that number, the amount of those dollars increases at the debt clock that we look at. So that's something to consider too. And remember that silver is a long-term hold. And essentially what happens is through the course of time, and as they continue to print money and digitize money, well, the price will reflect the value of silver more in line, which is another reason why I don't believe in this massive cabal and manipulation. But nonetheless, it is wise, I believe, to be realistic about silver, especially considering the information that I've shared.